Hello and welcome to Abid Siksha. Today is the third session for the ethics course, and in this session we'll be talking about the dimensions of ethics and how understanding this helps in making ethical decisions. Now before we get on with the session, let me give you a scenario. Now there is a person who has been brought up with the proper morals and he has a good understanding and outstanding values and principles. He is very honest to his family and every other person close to him. And he rates this value very high. Now, this person has got a job and he is able to do so much for the people. It is in a government department, but the only problem is that he is forced to indulge in corrupt activities. Now, with the values that he has been brought up with, which is very close to him and he places high value in his honesty, what should he do? If you were in his place, how would you come to a decision on your next step of action? Now, the notions of good and bad are a matter of perspective and are prone to alter regularly. It is the study conducted by ethics that attempts to develop a common viewpoint that determines what is deemed right and wrong. Fairness and injustice and other related issues are addressed by four primary facets of ethics, which are called the dimensions of ethics. Now, it is important to understand the dimensions of ethics in order to understand the complexity involved in making ethical decisions. And it is these ethical concepts that influence our personal and public relations. Now, ethics is divided into four main branches or four main dimensions, and they are descriptive ethics, normative ethics, meta-ethics, and applied ethics. We will go through this one by one in detail. Descriptive ethics are also known as comparative ethics, and it is the study of people's beliefs about morality on the basis of laws and customs from which they are brought up in. It gathers knowledge on how people live, observe patterns of events that arise in their surroundings, and then draws broad judgment based on this observation. It describes what people do, why they do it, and how it can be explained. The main focus is on understanding why people act in certain ways. And one thing about descriptive ethics is it does not judge or evaluate behaviors, but rather it tries to understand them. So we can say that descriptive ethics does not begin with preconceived theories and assumptions, but it rather comes from the angle which prefers to extensively study the subject's existing facts and examples. And that is done by making observations of actual decisions made by moral actors in a practical world. So descriptive ethics is all about what do people think is right. The second point is normative ethics. This is also called prescriptive ethics, and it investigates norms for the rightfulness and wrongfulness of the conduct. Now, if someone violates set norms, there are grounds for punishment as well as an explanation for doing so. One of the central questions of normative ethics is determining how basic morals of standards are arrived at and justified. And it is the study of ethical beliefs that prescribes how people ought to act and behave in society. And that gives a lot of different questions, and the answers fall into three broad categories: virtue ethics, deontological ethics and teleological ethics, and we will go through this one by one in detail. Now, what is virtue ethics? Our ethical actions ought to be inconsistent and compatible with certain ideal virtues that provide for the full development of our humanity. These virtues are dispositions and habits that enables us to act according to the highest potential of our character and on behalf of attributes, values like truth, honesty, courage, compassion, etc. We can say that it is the quest to understand and live a life of moral character. Now, and it is Plato who defined justice and other virtues as soul harmony, who established the groundwork for it. And the other key proponents are Aristotle and Thomas Aquinas. The next is deontology ethics. It contends that the ideal ethical action protects and respects the moral rights of those impacted, and it uses rules to distinguish right from wrong. Deontology is simple to apply. It just requires that people follow the rules and do their duty. This approach tends to fit well with our natural intuition about what is or isn't ethical, like rules such as do not kill, do not steal, do not do harm to people. And following the rules makes deontology easy to apply. It also means disregarding the possible consequences of our actions when determining what is right and what is wrong. So we can say that as a result, the means are more essential than aims. And the third point is the teleological ethics, or sometimes we call it as consequentialism. It is an ethical theory that judges whether or not something is right by what its consequences are. For instance, most people will agree that lying is wrong. And if we follow the deontology ethics, lying is wrong. Whether it's good or for bad purposes, lying itself is wrong. But if we follow the teleological ethics, if telling a lie would help save a person's life, then teleological ethics says that it's the right thing to do. And there are two examples of teleological ethics, and they are utilitarianism and hedonism. Utilitarianism judges consequences by a greatest good for the greatest number standard, while hedonism, on the other hand, says something is good if the consequences produces pleasure or avoids pain. So the end justifies the means when it comes to teleological ethics. The next dimension of ethics is meta-ethics. It inquires about our comprehension, how we perceive whether a decision, action, or purpose is good or negative. It focuses on the meaning of ethical terms themselves, besides applied questions of what should be done in a particular situation. And it doesn't consider whether an action is good or bad, rather it questions the goodness and badness of morality itself. So we can say that meta-ethics is ethics about ethics. It asks, what does right even mean? And the fourth dimension of ethics is applied ethics, also called practical ethics, and it's the application of ethics to real-world problems. Practical ethics attempts to answer the questions of how people should act in specific situations. For example, is it ethical for a business owner to bluff during negotiations with another company? There are two features that are necessary for an issue to be considered an applied ethical issue. The first is that the issue needs to be controversial in the sense that there are significant groups of people both for and against it. And the second requirement for an issue to be a distinctly moral issue and not just a social controversy. For example, some controversial issues could be abortion, homosexuality, nuclear war. These are some of the issues surrounding applied ethics. Now, applied ethics also have its own subsections. There are many different sections for applied ethics, but we will be considering 5 of it. The first is the biomedical ethics. Now, biomedical ethics uses ethical principles and decision making to solve actual or anticipated dilemmas in medicine and biology. Some of the issues pertaining to this sector is, as I've already said, the right to choose abortion or allocation of scarce health resources, or even issues like somatic genome editing. Now, when it comes to business ethics, it is also called corporate ethics, and it refers to contemporary organizational standards, principles, set of values and norms that govern the actions and behavior of an individual in the business organization. It examines ethical principles and morals or ethical problems that can arise in a business environment. The third is the environmental ethics. Environmental ethics studies the moral and ethical aspects of the relationship between humans and the natural environment. And it focuses on the environmental values and societal attitudes relating to protecting and sustaining biodiversity and ecological systems for the present as well as future generations. And the environmental ethics includes both human and non-human content. The next point is the military ethics. Military ethics is a broadly interdisciplinary study incorporating concerns about the conduct of war, decisions on how and when to engage in military operations, and issues relating to the moral psychology and care of those who serve and of veterans of military services. The next point is political ethics. It is also called political morality or public ethics, and it is a practice of making moral judgments about political action and political agents. And this is how the whole dimensions of ethics and its sub-dimensions looks like. Now we know that studying ethics and understanding the dimensions influences our personal and public relations. So what is private relations? What is public relations? Private relationships are often given like our life partner or friends, or inherited like our parents. And these are often permanent in our lives. Private relationships are unquestionably personal. They usually have a higher tolerance for flaws and are overflowing with love and affection expectations. And what is public relations? The practice of managing the spread of information between an individual or an organization, such as business, government agency, or non-profit organization, and the public is known as public relations. So we can say that public relations is a management function that engages monitoring and evaluating public attitudes and maintaining mutual relations and understanding between an organization and its public. And who are this public? Public could include shareholders, government, consumers, employees, and even the media. Now, unlike the private relations, public relations are not inherited, and they are often temporary in our lives with people who are different from us, or they may be even strangers. And they are likely to be instrumental, engaged in for mutual benefit, that's the quid pro quo, and we are usually guarded when it comes to the public relations. And there are many reasons why public relations are important, and some of the unethical public relations behavior includes keeping unfavorable news hidden, falsifying information, delaying service to a cause in order to serve a different interest, promising outcomes that can't be achieved, and using an unfavorable method to compel editors to carry promotional materials. It is critical for a public relations professional to be self-regulatory, ethical, and aware of the legal aspects of communication. Now, there are some principles that people in public relations need to follow, and this also includes the 7 principles of Nolan Committee. The first is selflessness. Now, holders of public office should act solely in the public interest. They should not do so in order to gain financial or other material benefits for themselves, their family, or their friends. The next is integrity. They should not obligate themselves in any way, whether financial or otherwise, to outside individuals or organizations. The next point is objectivity. Now, in carrying out public business, including making public appointments, awarding contracts, or recommending individuals for rewards and benefits, public officials should take decisions based on merits, not based on the alliance or on what they can benefit the most. The next is accountability. Holders of public office should be accountable for the actions taken by them. Public relationships require transparency and accountability in order to ensure fairness in public dealings and increase public confidence. And the next is openness. Holders of public office should be as open as possible about all the decisions and actions they take. They should give reasons for the decisions and restrict information only when the wider public interest clearly demands. The next is loyalty. Holders of a public office should be loyal to the people that they serve and not change sides or be partial based on what they can benefit the most. And they should also have the spirit of service. And this is crucial in order to serve the purpose of service. Now, civil servants are expected to go beyond the call of duty to serve public interest. And this has dual benefits. The first is that there is inner satisfaction to the person concerned, and the second is it inspires their colleagues to fulfill their service goals. And the last point is fairness. And this is the basic demand of our Constitution. This directs politicians and civil servants to frame policy framework in order to accommodate all sections of society based on the principle of equity. For example, the affirmative actions, the provisions of reservation for weaker sections have been incorporated through various legislations. And how does the relationship between ethics in private and public relations affect? Now, we know that ethics in private relationships is influenced by morality, while ethics in public relationships, they are influenced by social norms and values. Now, if both are in harmony with one another, it promotes physical, emotional, and mental well-being, and there is peace and harmony in the society. But too much of harmony between the private relationship and public relationship leads to stagnation. It can curb original thinking and new ideas, and there is also conformity and adherence to group decision making. But now, what if there is conflict between the private and the public? In the positive side, there can be socio-cultural changes, and reforms or change in government or political ideology can take place. But in the negative aspect, there is disintegration of society, and there is absence of law and order. Legitimacy of government is challenged. So we can say that both harmony and conflict between ethics in private and public relations can be beneficial as well as harmful to the society. Now, what is required is the right balance between this ethics so that integrity is maintained, but change and progress should also be welcomed if they are going to be good for the society. And that is the reason why it is important to understand the dimension of ethics in order to make good ethical decisions. And these concepts influence our personal and public relations. In the next session, we will be talking on the human value of ethics. Thank you.